Hello, friends. I'm Max, and today I'll share with you another terrible instance. On November 3, 2006, Justine Abshire, 27, was enjoying the honeymoon phase of her marriage. Recently entering into a new relationship, Justine had a lot on her mind. According to her desire to have children and her husband, two of Eric Abshire's children came from a prior partnership, which Justine cherished when they both first met in 1999. She worked as an employee at Lou's Home Improvement, and Eric, a manager who was just 20 years old, he 26, disclosed to her his two little daughters following his time in the military. They tied the knot after Eric's service in the Marines, and he started his own haulage company. While operating a dump truck, Justine found a suitable position teaching kindergarten at Emerald Hill Elementary in Culpeper, Virginia. On the specified date, November 3rd, Justine left for her job, but co-workers noticed something amiss. They saw what appeared to be bulging eyeballs and believed she had been sobbing, but Justine comforted them by blaming her allergies for her illness. Later that day, at her UVA master's degree class, she was approached by colleagues. Once more, she was 30 minutes late, putting on sunglasses after the class ended at 7 o'clock. Justine left with minimal delay. Did her colleagues realize this would be the last time they saw each other? A disturbing call to 911 about a hit-and-run on Taylorville Road in Bargersville, Virginia was reported. Roadside, Eric was discovered by the cops in a hysterical condition, holding his lifeless spouse Justine in the center of the street. Sadly, it was clear that Justine had suffered deadly wounds as a result of a car collision. Eric informed the police that Justine had reached out to him at 1:19 in the morning, telling him about her vehicle breaking down and asking for help. She was situated almost 5 miles from their home. Reacting quickly, Eric mounted his motorcycle and arrived at the location she gave, only to find her on the pavement. In an attempt to assist Justine, Eric sat with her, wearing his jacket to shield her. Prior to beginning a hunt for help, he went up to many adjacent homes, attempting to knock on doors to get help. At 1:57 in the morning, a homeowner initiated the 911 call. Later on, Eric acknowledged that he had his phone in his pocket, even if he hadn't at first recognized it when writing it initially. But the scene seemed to be a covert run-in. That perspective swiftly changed. An examination by the police revealed a lack of typical proof connected to a secret trail on Taylorville Road that notably in Bargersville, Virginia, there were no tire tracks, skid marks, or shattered glass, blood, or debris on Justine or her clothes, in spite of her serious injuries. This lack of evidence led authorities to believe that her passing wasn't a result of an arbitrary collision. Instead, a purposeful action that goes further, making matters more difficult for the police. They found that even so, Justine's vehicle, which Eric claims had mechanical problems, was flawless and in operational order. They discovered that this disparity elevated misgivings over Eric's accuracy. Justine shared a close bond with her siblings, Stephen and Heidi Schwartz, as well as Lauren Schwartz, her sister, and they were distraught when receiving a call from Eric's sibling informing them that Justine had passed away, shocking and leaving them in disbelief. They were familiar with Justine's fear of the dark and couldn't understand why she would prefer to drive by herself at night. The confusion grew after taking into account the conditions in which her body was found 600 feet from her vehicle. This included her coat and purse. This prompted inquiries as to why she would walk away from these possessions, away from the car, particularly when she had requested Eric to come pick her up. Just 2 days following Justine's memorial service, a noteworthy revelation occurred. Heidi, Justine's mother, came in for a meal and, feeling overwhelmed by emotion, collapsed. A sympathetic waiter provided support, causing Heidi to tell the terrible tale of Justine,
characterizing her as the kindergarten instructor who had been struck by a car. Shockingly, Heidi, the woman, disclosed that Justine had not passed away in a hit-and-run incident, and her husband was the target of suspicion. It happened that Eric was the prime suspect. Some individuals think Eric participated in Justine's demise. When the police questioned Eric, he showed a summary of the evening, claiming it was typically in his opinion. Justine came home after 7 p.m., having shown up for her class, and he soon after made reference to being with Justine for some time before he got a call from the hospital at Martha. Jefferson, where the call was from his sick mother, sharing the heartbreaking news of his mother's declining health. Eric informed the police that he returned to the hospital, where he remained until 11:30 p.m. He didn't return home right after. Instead, he proceeded to their hospital on Route 33 in a storage unit in Ruckersville, where he kept his motorcycle. Eric parked his automobile at the storage unit, removed the motorcycle, and rode, reporting to the police that he desired to clear his mind. According to Eric, he got back home around 12:30 a.m. Justine was alert and ready to converse, but they got into a fight because Justine wanted to talk about his mother's condition. Eric was hesitant to talk about it, informing the authorities that he expressed the requirement for some privacy, and in his answer, Justine supposedly spoke nicely. "Perhaps I should be left alone."
Additionally, based on Eric, Justine's departure and departure in her Ford Mustang 2002, Eric told the authorities he wasn't worried about when Justine would return and idly observed TV. His subsequent communication with Justine took place at 1:19 a.m. when he got a furious phone call from her, clarifying that her vehicle had malfunctioned and asked him to come get her, providing the precise location. He stated that it took him about 15 minutes to go to the residence following Justine's call. When he had to get his shoes to put them on, Eric claimed his helmet, keys, and jacket. He said he found her somewhere around 1:39 a.m. The authorities discovered Eric's suspicious account, particularly when taking into account the scene of the crime and given Justine's injuries. They were able to begin a thorough inquiry into the details surrounding Justine's death. 4 years would pass, but when the cops finally got enough, they formally accused Eric of being charged with the first-degree wife murder committed by him. The prosecution said Eric had committed the killing, motivated by a desire to terminate his union and for monetary reasons. Additionally, the court was notified that in the months previous to the occurrence in November, Justine had a noteworthy change. She stopped having meetings with friends, turned off calls, and even refused flowers from a friend as a housewarming present, mentioning Eric's inability to accept gifts. The prosecution argued that Justine passed away at another location before being positioned on the road, where she was found entirely within Eric's strategy to stage a hit-and-run. The claim was made that this was coordinated to obtain a $1.5 million insurance settlement in accordance with the investigation. The character of Justine's injuries were in conflict with the theory of a car accident in which she was injured. 113 blunt trauma injuries, such as several shattered bones, torn organs, and 23 head wounds. Remarkably, there was hardly any blood at the scene. Reports from 2 witnesses, doctors on call provided by the prosecution, disputed the idea that Justine was struck, which led to her death when standing in the road by a car. Rather, they said that she was suffered a vicious attack, being strangled and then run over following death. Dr. Todd Levick, who carried out the autopsy on Justine, proved that his results matched the manual, his identification of deep tissue strangulation bruises in the muscles of the neck and bleeding in the lip and eyes. Stated in court that Justine experienced multiple significant internal wounds, some of which did not bleed, suggesting that they occurred following Justine's death. He claimed to have found less when already dead. Less than half of what he would have anticipated drew her chest in, and Abdomens, being the second medical examiner, noted that the typical female's body
normally has 5 layers of blood. Although there was only about 1 liter recovered from Justine, claims that this discrepancy bolstered the prosecutor's position did not coincide with the blood was scarce on the way, bolstering their claim that she was murdered somewhere else. In high school, Allison Crawford dated Eric, school, and raised his 2 children. Children stated in court that fewer than 2 hours prior to Eric finding Justine on the street asking about their future, 43 calls were made between them on the day when Eric showed enduring affection for Allison. Allison said in court that he inquired if there was a possibility that our connection, disclosing Eric's acknowledgement, regretting getting married to Justine's sister. Witness provided testimony in favor of the prosecution. Cecil Robuch stated that he was late on Greene County's back roads that evening. He went looking for a school bus. Admitted to the court that he didn't know roads, so he maneuvered his vehicle into a driveway to reverse the claim of the titlo that a man came up to him and revealed the gas in his wife's automobile was almost gone. Requested Seil to go with him to a petrol station, however. Before they arrived at the petrol station, the guy stopped his vehicle and informed Seil that he
had also run out of petrol. He requested a transport back to his house, and he complied, saying that Seil did not relate the occurrence to Justine's situation up till he noticed a show upon Justine's passing. 2 years later, he declared in court that he thought the man he had assisted Eric in setting up the hit and flee, however not realizing it at the time after the court received notice of Eric's financial difficulties throughout the procedures giving testimony in court. Steve Schwartz, Justine's father, stated the major credit went to his daughter Holder for the pair, as well as after her death, they owed money. Of $85,000 adjusters for insurance claims offered testimony on a number of policies, with Eric serving as the recipient in less than 2 weeks following Justine's death. Eric filed an uninsured driver's assert that, if authorized, would have given him the right to $100,000, with the possibility of an extra $1.5 million in case the commercial aspect received notable approval. Justine's identity appeared on the protection for one of the garbage trucks Eric declared bankruptcy in 2009. Finally being granted $330,000 was used to make the settlement unpaid bills for this fiscal year backdrop, gave the scene a vital dimension. The court's comprehension of the matter throughout the trial, certain evidence was presented without the jury present regarding claims that Eric had an affair claimed to have had a month prior to only 3 days following Justine's death. In addition, it was proposed that he had lewd pictures of a woman, but destroyed them to prevent bad views, according to the prosecution. Eric's mobile phone records were incongruent. His assertion that he was at Martha Jefferson Hospital when he declared that he was in fact at home for the crucial times, this, in accordance with the prosecution, gave Ed plenty of time to carry out the offense. They informed the jury that 2 instances occurred late in the evening and into the next mornings that were especially relevant, starting at 10:04 p.m. until 11:23 at night, as well as at 12:08 a.m. up to 1:19 a.m. As soon as a call came through, Justine's phone in the mobile phone log indicated that he was not at the hospital, but rather at home, during which the prosecution emphasized to the jury that Eric utilized his phone 157 times. Times during the incident's day made his assertion that he only realized his cell phone was in his pocket when he discovered Justine's physique is extremely improbable. In addition to the prosecution emphasized Eric's experience as a Marine, with training in first aid and CPR, noting that in spite of this instruction, he supposedly didn't try to help. Justine included an intriguing and disturbing information. The prosecution revealed that Eric possessed a disparaging moniker that Justine uses to refer to her object. The defense insisted unwaveringly that Justine's demise was caused by a concealed. They continued to claim that Eric's alibi was reliable
in claiming to have been up until 11:30 at Martha Jefferson Hospital p.m., going to see his mother, and then proceeded to a storage facility to get his motorbike back. The defense argued that the chronology provided by the prosecution did not permit enough. It is now Eric's turn to murder Justine and put on a hit and run to bolster their assertion of a contented union, as the defense offered Eric's brother as a potential witness, who had spent time living with the couple.
Once he attested to the sincere joy in Eric and Justine's relationship partnership, highlighting his advantageous exchanges with Justine to pose questions. The defense presented the prosecution's case, uncertainty about the reliability of the testimony. They thought he was driven by the $50,000 prize for tips provided by Justine's parents, with the intention of obtaining favorable treatment with regard to 2 felonies related to fraud. He was defending against a $110,000 debt intended to cast doubt on Seal's dependability as a witness, raising doubts about his motives and any prejudices, in spite of the defense's attempts to contest the case, such as assertions regarding the medical examiner's claimed failure to follow a particular process. In the end, the jury convicted Eric guilty of first-degree murder. The choice was determined using the data that was provided throughout the trial, which comprised the prosecution's claims on the nature of Justine's wounds, the sequence of happenings, and Eric's acts brought forth by the guilty. Eric received a life sentence. In the while Eric was being sentenced in prison, the court heard moving testimonies from victims' declarations. Among them, one from Justine's sister, Lauren, who said, Levin, her sister, 7 years prior to her demise at the hands of "I witnessed my sister's life begin to fade. She grew reticent and quiet, grew terrified, impoverished, and the victim of abuse at home, which I observed firsthand, and in retrospect, I feel as I witnessed Lauren's death." Evidence presented at the sentencing hearing presented a disturbing image of the connection between Eric and Justine, declared that she had seen Eric shove Justine hard before. After being married, Justine revealed, regarding multiple further instances of maltreatment in the months preceding that Thanksgiving Day, Justine's relatives and friends observed a shift in her personality. Justine was gentle by nature, amiable and caring, and even though she still possessed such attributes, she stopped seeing friends and coworkers for get-togethers. She was quiet, reserved, and a shell of her previous self. The testimony goes on, demonstrated that Justine was affected by a feeling of unworthiness, significantly increased attempts to win Eric over. Even on their wedding day, there were indications of conflict. Eric chose to travel on his own, but he was far away riding a motorbike by herself. Justine missed many events surrounding her own marriage, encompassing lunch, and devoted the second Eric's aloneness during the night in the motel. Horrific history was revealed while the hearing in which he had earlier accusations of intentional injury and was the target of a guardianship decree from the mother of his 2 children. Eric stated that this resulted from disagreements that escalated to violence, saying that she hit and assaulted him with a remote control in his face. He said he grabbed for self-defense, grabbing her throat and shirt, while the 4 years that law enforcement, looking into Justine's family situation, battled valiantly to guarantee there would a measure of retribution for her father. Steve Schwartz stated that aside from desiring the other issue was resolved by Justine's case. I honestly hope that nobody else is successful. Injured before that occurs? What do you do? Consider the narrative from today and write your thoughts about this matter in the comments. I appreciate your time and consideration. To avoid missing it, suggest registering for the channel in addition to pressing the bell. Every day, new videos are uploaded about taking good care of yourself and your family.